Manx Radio's Update with Lewis Foster.
Fast am I. Welcome along to Update for Monday the 10th of February. It's 5 o'clock and time for a half-hour look at the latest news on and from the Isle of Man. Let's get the working week started. Coming up, concerns for the future of air connectivity, ANPR cameras soon to be introduced at the island's ports, and a clarification from the Manx Minister behind recent headlines in the UK regarding the triple lock. All that and more, plus weather and sport and what to watch out for on the roads. Let us know your thoughts. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, let's have the headlines with Amy Griffiths. Fast am I, Amy?
Fast am I. Those under 40 living on the Isle of Man are said to be less satisfied with their lives than the older generation. A survey carried out by Statistics Isle of Man also shows 13% of people are not putting their heating on because of their financial situation. Government's taking steps to introduce automated number plate recognition software on the island. The technology's been praised by law enforcement agencies in the UK as an important tool in finding and stopping criminal offenders. A former infrastructure minister says people shouldn't be surprised that easyJet has reduced flights to and from the Isle of Man. Douglas Central MHK Chris Thomas believes the government needs to stop conducting reports on air services and instead take action to secure better connectivity.
We've got to be using our subsidy and our purchasing power properly.
A new group's been created to support the island's farmers with their mental health. The Manx National Farmers Union has launched a Greener Grass Network. General Secretary Sarah Comish says a farmer's day never ends.
Once your physical working day is finished, you're then coming indoors to this pile of paperwork that you have to work your way through in order just to keep your farm business above water.
A 2,000-year-old bronze spoon used for telling the future has been discovered on the Isle of Man. It dates back to the Iron Age and is said to be one of the most intriguing objects ever found here. Both Peter Hickman and Davy Todd will be leaving FHO Racing's team for this year's TT. They'll now form part of the new 810 racing team in the British Superbikes and road racing. To international news, and an NHS trust has admitted it failed to provide safe care and treatment to 3 babies who died within days of their birth in 2021. The Care Quality Commission brought charges against Nottingham University hospitals. And the King's given the UK Prime Minister a tour of a housing project he inspired in Cornwall. It's rare for the monarch and political leaders to take part in joint engagements. That's the latest. I'll be back with the news in full at 6.
Gromayad, thank you, Amy. Now, the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Largely cloudy with a few showers to start, then becoming mainly dry this evening and overnight. Moderate to fresh east or northeast wind and a minimum temperature of 2 degrees. Largely cloudy and mainly dry tomorrow with a moderate to fresh east or northeast wind, top temperature 6 degrees. Remaining settled on Wednesday and staying mostly cloudy, again with a moderate to fresh easterly wind. Highest temperature 6 degrees. Sunrise tomorrow morning at 7:47 and sunset tonight was at 17 minutes past 5.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Cannell's Agricultural Supplies have been serving the good folk of the north for over 30 years, supplying homegrown wheats, whole and rolled oats, working clothing, fencing, animal feeds, parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Cannell's on Facebook.
Patricia Wild Opticians is celebrating over 30 years of friendly, caring service in Farm Hill and Ramsey. Visit us for professional eye care with stress-free parking. Phone Patricia Wild Opticians on 813 977.
For over 25 years, Langness Maintenance Services have been the block paving specialists, including property maintenance, fencing and landscaping. Fast, reliable and competitive. For a free no-obligation quote, call Paddy on 49667. Langness Maintenance Services, 49667.
A ground source heat pump can save thousands of pounds a year, and you can harness this energy on island with Geothermal Limited, the water borehole experts. Visit drilling.im and see how a ground source heat pump borehole works. That's drilling.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And the time now, 5 minutes past 5. The trial of a Douglas man accused of causing death by dangerous driving has started at Douglas Courthouse today. It follows the death of Onken resident Jordan Thomas last year. News editor Tessa Hawley was in court for Manx Radio today and joins me in the studio now. Tessa, what can you tell us about what happened in court today?
So this afternoon, a jury of 7 people, 6 men and 1 woman, were sworn in to preside over the trial of Jackson Joseph Paul. Mr Paul, who's 35 years old, denies causing the death of Jordan Thomas at the start of 2024. Today, the court heard Mr Thomas, who was 29 years old, was severely injured in a road traffic collision on Harbour Road in Onken at around 7:45 on the evening of the 24th of February. He was flown to Aintree Hospital in Liverpool but was pronounced dead 9 days later on the 4th of March.
What else do we know then about that collision?
So this afternoon, the prosecution opened their case against Mr Paul. Prosecutor Roger Kane told the court that Mr Thomas had suffered catastrophic injuries as a result of climbing onto and then falling from the bonnet of Mr Paul's BMW. He told jurors that they would be shown 2 videos this week recorded by Mr Paul's passenger, which showed some of the incident, and he described these as the most important evidence in the case. Mr Kane said the first video would show Mr Thomas lying across the bonnet, pulling at the windscreen wipers before Mr Paul begins reversing. The second video, he said, would show Mr Thomas lying across the windscreen as the car begins moving forward before he slid from the vehicle and into the road. Mr Kane told jurors there can be no doubt that such behaviour was bizarre. Was he intoxicated, joking about, or suffering from a mental health episode, he asked.
Do we have any indication then at this stage what Mr Paul's defence will be?
Well, the prosecutor told the jury the defendant was arrested at the scene and then gave an account to police the following day. Mr Paul claimed Mr Thomas was standing between parked cars as he attempted to drive past, and when he'd motioned for him to cross the road, Mr Thomas had instead got onto his bonnet. Mr Paul claims he's tried to put his automatic BMW into reverse, but accidentally put it in drive, meaning the car moved forwards instead. Now, Mr Kane said it's the prosecution's case that Mr Paul was driving dangerously because he'd gone from 0 to 30 miles per hour over a 50-metre stretch of road, which was unreasonable and disproportionate, and, he said, fell below the standards of a competent driver. Now, live evidence in the case will start tomorrow, and a reminder that the defendant, Jackson Paul, denies the charge against him.
News editor Tessa Hawley.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The time now, 8 minutes past 5. A former infrastructure minister says people shouldn't be surprised that easyJet has reduced flights to and from the island. Douglas Central MHK Chris Thomas told Manx Radio he believes government needs to stop conducting reports on air services and instead take action to secure better connectivity. His comments come following a reduction in services between Ronaldsway and Liverpool and Manchester. Mr Thomas says he believes more could be done to aid the travelling public.
The crucial point is we've now got 4 reports over the last 5 or 6 years, and we need more than reports. It's absolutely vital that we get better airline connectivity. My own family are all over me today about their shock and disappointment with the changes that are on the timetable for next summer, because although they were previously available, they're becoming more widely known. So we've got to be doing practical things. Of course, the airport needs to do everything it can to be better. So what the government has done to air services in the last few years is just to dally and wait and look for agreement about who's going to do what. We needed to do more 3 years ago, but hey, that's happened. Now we've actually got to do it, and we've got to be talking about practical things like keeping aircraft and crew here on the island, and if we have to pay for it, we have to pay for it. We've got to do with practical things like improving capacity of the airport to get planes in and out in different conditions. We've got to be using our subsidy and our purchasing power properly to encourage airlines to provide the service that we all need.
Now, you mentioned having crew on the island, living on the island, from the island. Are you trying to bring back, that whole Manx Airlines kind of thing?
Well, not necessarily, and that would be the most expensive way of doing it, but certainly we should be having partnerships, strategic partnerships with airlines. And one thing that I know we could be talking with easyJet about is actually paying for their crew and their plane to be here from the last flight to the first flight the following day. The number of flights since 2012 has more than halved because the aircraft have got bigger. The number of flights has reduced. That decline doesn't show up so much in the number of passengers because the aircraft have got bigger. We've got to really think about, what size and type of planes we have coming here, and we're in a really bad situation. It's a vicious circle because the island is a less pleasant place to live and work and visit if you have bad air connectivity.
Douglas Central MHK Chris Thomas speaking to Chanel there. Well, last month, Tynwald unanimously approved the Strategic Air Services Policy, which reiterates a commitment to the current Open Skies arrangement. The time now 11 minutes past 5. A government minister quoted in a UK newspaper as saying, "I'm glad we scrapped the triple lock," says the headline chosen by the newspaper didn't accurately reflect what she said. Daphne Kane, Education Minister, says a second version, which reads, "We may scrap it, bracket the triple lock, and the rest of the UK will follow," is more accurate. Ms Kane says the island needs to have a discussion about the best way forward. Sticking with what has been the rule in recent years isn't sustainable, she says.
We do need to have a national debate on it. I welcome the opportunity for members to have the input into that. But we also have to have a look at the longer term. The Isle of Man is behind on some employment legislation. We are slowly catching up thanks to DFE. But there was a consultation 5 or 6 years ago which asked people what we should be doing about workplace pensions or private pensions. And I think there is a very clear case that for people to have a comfortable level of retirement, perhaps equal to the income that they've enjoyed while they have been working, that we need to fund our pensions properly. But this is a safety net. This is a basic state pension. And the way to make it sustainable for the younger generations is to ensure that we adjust it now. We break that one link to the UK wages growth and we take back autonomy. We enable the fund to be sustainable with a good increase for Manx pensioners, and then we can tweak it in the future. The next actuarial review is in 2027, so come 2028, they may be able to adjust the predictions for how that fund is going to perform and make any relevant changes at that point. But I think for me, the key is that we are being fair to all pensioners, those at the moment and those in the future.
Education Minister Daphne Kane there speaking about that headline in the UK. And we did have the Treasury Minister on, of course, last week talking about the confusion that UK media had caused over their plans for the Manx pension guarantee. You can find more information on all of that over at manxradio.com.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
We'll head over to the roads now because the big thing today, of course, is those temporary lights on the new Castletown Road. They're in place at Newtown between Ballyvarton and Mount Murray. This is for 24 hours a day for resurfacing works over the next 4 or 5 weeks. Do let us know what the traffic is like in that area around about now. WhatsApp 166 177 if you can. In Douglas tonight, the Millennium Bridge across Douglas Harbour will close at 8 o'clock again until 4:30 in the morning for planned maintenance work. And in Laxey until Valentine's Day, the 14th of February, temporary lights on Pinfold Hill for cover replacement and resurfacing. In off-island travel, no concerns over at the airport. Flights getting in and out on time this afternoon. And the sailings too, no concerns for the schedule tonight. Manxmen due to arrive back into Douglas around 6 o'clock. Sailing back to Heysham tonight at 7:15.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside. It's coming up to 5:15 now, and there's a strategy currently being carried out by government to strengthen security at the island's borders. Part of that is the introduction of automated number plate recognition software on the island. Amy Griffiths is here in the studio with me. And Amy, you can tell us a bit more about what this system is, can't you?
I can, yes. And you'll likely have seen these ANPR cameras in the UK. In simple terms, they scan a vehicle's registration number and check it against a database of vehicles of interest. And it's been praised, this technology, by law enforcement agencies as an important tool in finding and stopping criminal offenders. But there have also been concerns about privacy too.
Yes, and well, we've heard for a while now that the Department of Home Affairs wants to introduce this here. So how are they going to do it?
So what's been announced today is this two-step programme. Step 1 will see the Isle of Man Constabulary given access to the UK's ANPR database. This will start next month and allow police to manually search for vehicles on the UK system and set alerts. The cost of accessing that system, it's been confirmed, is around £32,000 a year. Step 2, meanwhile, will see ANPR cameras of our own introduced at seaports, and those will also be connected to the UK database. They're expected to come into place in May, with cameras scanning vehicles as they leave and arrive at the sea terminal, for example. Any existing alerts on the system will then be immediately flagged.
Well, I mentioned before that we've heard about these plans already, so this is just clarifying the how, where and when. But ultimately, it's part of this wider strategy, isn't it?
That's right, and the Department of Home Affairs Securing Our Island strategy, which was published in September last year in response to what government says is a range of threats from criminals who seek to exploit our open borders and our position within the common travel area. Other measures include passenger verification at the island's ports, scanning and monitoring inbound and outbound post, and transferring the responsibility for policing the island's ports from the Department of Infrastructure to the police. The use of ANPR won't just be automatically granted, though. The DHA will have to put forward legislation and an order before Tynwald for approval in the coming months. That includes a code of practice that sets out how law enforcement officers here must use the system.
So what about these concerns then around privacy? We even had a call to the Man in Line today along those lines.
Yes, well, the use of cameras by government anyway always draws comparisons to Orwell, and the DHA acknowledges there will be concerns, particularly around this and facial recognition. It says ANPR is designed to capture details of a vehicle, although the image of those in the vehicle at the time may also be captured. But it assures legislation and practical requirements around data protection apply. It's also acknowledged other uses for ANPR, including parking management, toll collection and fleet management, among other applications. However, government says the use by the police is not for this purpose.
Amy Griffiths, Guramayed. Now, farmers on the Isle of Man are being encouraged to ask for help with loneliness and mental health issues that may arise while at work. It's as the Manx National Farmers Union observes the Yellow Wellies Mind Your Head campaign, which focuses on tackling well-being issues in the agricultural sector. In light of this, here on the island, the MNFU has launched a new group known as Greener Grass to assist and support its members. The Farm Safety Foundation's research shows that 95% of young farmers, those under 40 in the UK, believe that mental health is the biggest hidden problem facing farmers today. Sam Morrie is someone who can speak from experience as he farms up near Andreas. He told me about some of the stresses farmers are facing on a day-to-day basis.
Agriculture in the Isle of Man it's very similar to the UK, but we've got the added pressures of being on an island, so you haven't got the road links the same as the UK. Farming's traditionally, you're stressed with the weather, you've got financial responsibilities, you've got livestock, crops, machinery. There's nothing more stressful if you've got a weather window and a machine breaks down, you can't get parts or you can't get staff to fix it. The stresses are untold. And I would say the statistics are probably similar for the Isle of Man as to the UK. It's one of those, we're not in the public light, so it's not recognised, it's not seen. Farming's so isolated, there's only one or two people on farms most of the time. And it can be it's very lonely sometimes. Mm-hmm. It just depends on the seasons. Sort of summertime you can see people, and wintertime you might not see anyone, or vice versa. It depends.
And Sam, you farm up in Andreas, so you can speak from experience and that industry perspective, can't you?
Yeah, like say I'm an agricultural contractor as well as farming, and I'm lucky I can get round farms and see people. But you're also a very long time in a tractor cab on your own. You've got the modern advancements now with smartphones and social media, so it's not as isolated as it was. And that's the problem. You could be going back historically here. There's always, for the last 30, 40, 50 years, there probably has been issues with mental health in agriculture, but it's never been recognised until recently.
Sam Morey there. Well, you can find out much more about the Mind Your Head campaign and a link to the Greener Grass Facebook page via manxradio.com. 5:20 now. Those under 40 living on the Isle of Man are said to be less satisfied with their lives than the older generation. That's just one of the findings of a survey carried out by Statistics Isle of Man, the first of its kind since the COVID pandemic, put the study on an indefinite hiatus in 2020. Chanel Suku has been taking a look at the results.
In August last year, the Social Attitude Survey was randomly sent to 3,000 homes across the island. Of that figure, only 14.8% of those targeted responded. The survey asked for people's views on employment, public services, healthcare and safety on the Isle of Man. While it showed overall that people regard the island as being safe, public trust in government and the Council of Ministers remains low. On a scale of 1 to 6, Coman and the Legislative Council scored 4.1 and 4.4 respectively. Trust in individual MHKs was higher at a score of 5 out of 6. In terms of happiness, the island population is said to have very moderate levels of happiness. However, there is significant disparity between the different age groups. For example, those under 40 prove to be less satisfied or happy in their lives compared to the older demographic. Access to housing and money worries have been cited as reasons behind that. Meanwhile, in terms of financial security, the younger age group also ranked lower, with results showing that those under 40 still find it difficult to manage on their current income. Overall, 45.3% of Manx residents say they're able to live comfortably, while 14.6% find it difficult or very difficult. The remaining 40.1% say they're coping. The survey also found 13% of respondents went without heat, while 6.7% didn't get a cooked meal each day, which supports the notion that food inflation and energy prices have impacted at least a relatively large segment of the population. In other matters, the survey found most working people here are satisfied with their jobs, and the majority of people are in favour of some inward migration regardless of race or ethnic group.
Chanel Gurumaya there. Now, I probably shouldn't have favourite stories, but listen to this. A 2,000-year-old bronze spoon used for telling the future has been discovered on the Isle of Man. It dates back to the Iron Age, as Amy Griffiths reports.
It's the first to have ever been found on the island, with only 28 others known about worldwide. It was found on private land in Patrick by metal detectorist Rob Middleton. Dating to around 400 to 100 BC, the bronze spoons are usually found in pairs, and it's thought pouring liquid into them would tell something about the future. Alison Fox, curator for archaeology for Manx National Heritage, says it's one of the most intriguing objects ever discovered on the island. She says Iron Age finds are relatively scarce, with bronze spoons dating to this period rare, which makes this find all the more remarkable. It's said to be an unusual find illustrating potential prehistoric ritual activity taking place on the Isle of Man. The spoon has a broad, strawberry-shaped bowl and a circular handle with spiral designs. The bowl has 2 very lightly engraved lines forming a cross, with the lines meeting towards the deepest part of the spoon. Although the exact function of the spoon is unknown, the leading theory is that it was used in divination rituals as our ancestors sought to predict the future. The spoon's been donated to the Manx National Collections, cared for by Manx National Heritage at the Manx Museum. It'll go on display at the House of Manannan from Friday.
Amy Griffiths there, thank you. Now we're turning to the latest sporting news from the Isle of Man, and Darren Timpson is here with the latest. Faster my, Darren.
Faster my. Starting with SC Isle of Man, manager Paul Jones has called on support from everyone involved with the club as the Ravens push for the North West Counties Football League playoff spots. Jones' side won the second to last away game of the season on Saturday as they beat Glossop North End 2-1 and stay 8th in the table on 56 points. They currently face an uphill battle to make the playoffs, but with 10 out of the 11 remaining games to be played at home, Jones has said the club needs to use their home advantage.
all of us, the supporters, everyone associated with the club need to use those home games as an opportunity to really push on. And, I think if we can create a really positive atmosphere for each other and in the ground, then it'll give the players lots of confidence to go and show how good they can be. And I think we've proven this year that we can win games in a variety of different ways, and whatever comes our way in terms of the opposition at home over the next kind of 11 games, we have to find a way to win. We have to find a way to score a goal, and I'm confident that the group can do that. But, it's not going to be easy, but the more that we can work hard for each other and the fans can really get behind us in good numbers, then, it makes it easier than it would be otherwise. And everyone did what we needed them to do today, and it's Steve's turn to get the plaudits, which happens quite often, but that is because he's a very, very good footballer who at this level causes teams lots of problems, and we would like him to be doing that week in and week out, and that's the challenge for everyone to help him and the other players that can change games for us, be really at it and be 8 out of 10s every week. We've got such good technical footballers within the island, but in the group, especially the group that we've got, and sometimes we overcomplicate the game a little bit and try and play too nice a football. And when we played into channels and had runners in channels and put them under pressure with balls over the top and just played a very stereotypical non-league game of football, we did really well and we managed the game. And maybe we need to just be happy to play the game that's required to win the points rather than the game that we think we're capable of playing. There's times to do that, and today wasn't that. And I think performance was a good one. We asked them to play a very different way to how we played against Bury and how we played against Stirling the week before.
Ravens boss Paul Jones. In motorsport, Peter Hickman and Davey Todd have left FHO Racing. The TT winners will now race under the new 810 banner when the season starts in April. In cycling, the Manx Viking Wheelers Cycling Club has announced the return of the cycling criterium for 2025. The club says more details will be announced soon, but they also say the Cottertown Mace will be brought back with a fresh twist for a new generation.
Darren Simpson with today's sporting news. Thank you, Guru Mayed. And that is it for Update Tonight. Thank you for joining me. You can listen back to tonight's programme, of course, as a podcast on Manx Radio shortly. Phil Gaughan's up next with Agenda, and here at 6 o'clock, Michelle Kane presents Greatest Hits. Beth will be back with Update at the same time tomorrow. In the meantime, have a good evening.